What happened to Justin? I don't know. He's developed a drug problem, he has herpes, or he has staph. Shit looks weird as fuck, and he's got like sores on his.
A routine training camp took a bizarre twist when fight fans spotted something alarming in Justin Gaethje's recent content. One single image sparked wild theories, official denials, and serious concern throughout the camps. Because if Gaethje can't make it to the octagon, the UFC's got a lethal backup plan already locked and loaded. The bacterial scare that nearly destroyed a championship fight.
What's going on, guys? What is going on? What is going on? We're still 3 weeks away from the next card. As insane as that is. So, but only 2 weeks away from the next fight week, which is supposed to be UFC 324, Justin Gaethje versus Patrick Pimblett.
The screenshots.
January 5th, 2026. Started like any other day in Gaethje's preparation for what everyone expected to be an explosive lightweight title clash. Instead, it became ground zero for mass hysteria that almost torpedoed one of the year's biggest UFC showdowns. Sharp-eyed supporters, tracking every piece of Gaethje's camp footage, caught sight of something that made their blood run cold. An angry red, swollen mark sitting right there on his neck that immediately triggered alarm bells across the entire MMA universe.
Looks like Gaethje may have staph. I don't know for sure. I don't know. I don't have the picture right in front of me right now, but the picture looks pretty gruesome. But it could be something where there's like a scab.
The news exploded across every platform imaginable, with the fury of wildfire tearing through drought conditions. Thousands of worried fans started magnifying that suspicious red spot, dissecting every single detail of that concerning mark, with the intensity of detectives working a major case. The main discussion thread alone pulled in over 700,000 views on that first panic-inducing post, with users desperately debating whether UFC 324's headliner was about to crumble just 19 days out from showtime. For anyone not aware of how devastating staph infections can be for professional fighters, these bacterial nightmares caused by Staphylococcus rank among the most terrifying problems in combat sports. Staph thrives in MMA training environments because of the toxic combination of factors always present. Non-stop skin contact during wrestling sessions, communal training surfaces loaded with bacteria, open wounds and scratches that create entry points, and sometimes questionable cleanliness standards in training spaces. When these infections establish themselves, they usually appear as angry red bumps or excruciating abscesses that can destroy even the most dedicated athlete's plan.
Just saw the pic of Justin, and dude is growing a second head. Yeah, looks like some of the poisonous mushrooms from The Last of Us, does it not?
Everyone remembered what happened with similar infections ruining big fights, especially Benoit Saint-Denis before his massive showdown with Dustin Poirier. Following a playbook that would become eerily familiar to Gaethje's current mess, Saint-Denis completely denied having any staph infection problems. Then after the fight ended, he confessed that staph had actually been destroying his system the whole time. The outcome was devastating. Despite putting together a brilliant opening round that displayed his true abilities, Saint-Denis found himself completely drained by the second frame. His body simply couldn't maintain the energy needed to perform at elite levels, while the infection wreaked havoc internally. The similarities to what Gaethje was facing seemed impossible to dismiss. Both scenarios featured a fighter rejecting claims about staph infections, both had photographic proof that appeared to contradict those rejections, and both happened during critical preparation periods before major contests. The fight world, having watched competitors perform while compromised and deliver disappointing shows, remained justifiably doubtful of any promises that things were perfectly normal. UFC 324's importance couldn't be overstated. This card marked the organization's groundbreaking launch on Paramount Plus through their massive new television agreement, representing a revolutionary change in how audiences would experience the sport's biggest events. The headliner showcased 37-year-old Gaethje, a former interim lightweight king and BMF champion, known for his legendarily brutal fighting approach, squaring off with 30-year-old Paddy Pimblett, the unbeaten UFC sensation with enormous fan base support and serious finishing ability. Whoever won would capture interim lightweight gold, while undisputed champion Ilia Topuria stayed away dealing with personal matters. Gaethje brought a 26-5 professional slate into this battle, going 9-5 during his UFC run. His entire career revolved around all-out warfare, collecting 20 career stoppages through knockouts and technical knockouts. His latest outing, a clear decision win over Rafael Fiziev in their second meeting at UFC 330 in March 2025, proved that even pushing 40, Gaethje remained among the most dangerous strikers at lightweight. Those infamous leg attacks had destroyed multiple top contenders, including both Fiziev and Dustin Poirier, while his relentless pressure style created some of the most unforgettable moments in company history. Pimblett, meanwhile, carried an outstanding 23-3 professional record with a flawless 7-0 UFC streak. His breakthrough came via dominant third-round stoppage of Michael Chandler, a showing that silenced critics questioning whether he belonged with elite competitions. His approach mixed heavy volume striking at 5.1 significant shots landed per minute with smooth Brazilian jiu-jitsu that produced 10 career submission wins. Betting lines favored Pimblett heavily, with odds from -210 to -230, suggesting roughly 67 to 70%. Gaethje entered as the underdog at +75 to +190, though many experienced bettors saw serious value in the veteran given his proven knockout power against top opposition and his impressive 3-0 record when getting +1. The show was locked in for January 24, 2026, at the legendary T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The main card would start at 9 p.m. Eastern, earlier than traditional pay-per-view times as part of the Paramount Plus era modification. Beyond the headliner, the event stacked several compelling battles, including women's bantamweight title action between champion Kayla Harrison and returning icon Amanda Nunes, plus Sean O'Malley facing Song Yadong, Weldo Cortez Acosta meeting Derek Lewis, and Arnold Allen taking on Gianna Silva. None of that talent mattered if the main event collapsed due to bacterial infection. The fight community had witnessed too many cases where athletes competed while dealing with health issues, only to produce efforts that fell way short of expectations. Beyond competitive concerns, real health dangers existed about fighters entering the octagon while fighting bacterial infections that might spread through blood contact during the violent encounters that defined professional combat. Athletic commissions had specific authority to prevent these situations, though their capacity to identify and handle problems relied heavily on honest communication from the athletes themselves. The timing couldn't have been worse for the UFC's marketing machine. With under 3 weeks until fight night, any main event alteration would mean frantically securing an appropriate replacement while managing fan expectations for those who'd already committed based on the announced matchup. The promotional engine had been operating at maximum capacity, creating content, interviews, and preview shows, all focused on the Gaethje Pimblett storyline. Those images spreading online displayed what looked like a serious lesion, not minor irritation usually linked to razor accidents or simple skin problems. Medical experts commenting on social platforms noted that the visible signs, redness, swelling, obvious sensitivity, matched bacterial infection better than innocent explanation. However, none of these opinions could be considered conclusive without direct examination, leaving the MMA community guessing based on limited visual proof, Gaethje's rejection, and the Tsarukyan wildcard. January 6, 2026. Justin Gaethje hit social media platform X, previously Twitter, to directly confront the wild theories that had dominated MMA discussions for 20. His statement carried all the signature Gaethje intensity and bluntness that supporters expected from the fighter, called the highlight. "Did you screenshot me eating brisket from my YouTube video to make it look like I have herpes on my lip? My neck is a healing ingrown hair," Gaethje posted, adding sarcastically, "It's an ingrown hair on my neck and brisket hanging out of my mouth in Estradamus." The reply was pure Gaethje, aggressive, dismissive, and loaded with the disdain that suggested he considered the theories completely ridiculous. He insisted the questionable mark was simply a healing ingrown hair, an explanation some found totally reasonable, while others remained deeply suspicious. Comment sections across social platforms showed a completely split fanbase. Numerous users highlighted that Gaethje's denial mirrored exactly what Benoit Saint-Denis did, similarly brushing off health concerns before eventually confessing the truth after his performance collapsed. The history of fighters denying staph infections, then having those denials exposed as false, made many watchers hesitant to simply believe Gaethje's word. Talk of a replacement instantly brought one name into every conversation: Arman Tsarukyan. The top-ranked lightweight challenger had been controversially skipped for this interim title shot, with the UFC choosing instead the more commercially appealing Gaethje-Pimblett pairing. That decision created major backlash among serious fans and experts, who considered Tsarukyan the obvious pick based on achievement and skill. Tsarukyan had publicly declared his readiness to serve as backup should either fighter become unavailable. This perfectly matched his character, an athlete who'd repeatedly shown willingness to accept any challenge whenever needed. His unofficial backup status for UFC 3024 meant he was already maintaining peak training condition and could step in on reasonable short notice. The 29-year-old Armenian entered this scenario with an excellent 23-3 professional record, including roughly 10 wins and 2 defeats in the UFC, his latest victory. A controlling arm triangle submission of Dan Hooker in November 2025 at UFC Qatar only reinforced his case as the most deserving title challenger at lightweight. His style blended world-class wrestling with constantly improving striking, forming a complete fighting package many believed was better than any other lightweight alive. Tsarukyan had openly dismissed both Gaethje and Pimblett, publicly calling them punching bags and stating that neither was on my level. While trash talk was standard in MMA, Tsarukyan's confidence came from genuine technical advantages most analysts recognized. His wrestling would theoretically shut down Gaethje's striking threats, while his ground dominance would overwhelm Pimblett despite the Englishman's submission skills. The lightweight landscape created fascinating context for this potential replacement situation. Pimblett had previously indicated he'd rather fight Gaethje than Tsarukyan, claiming that no one cares about him regarding the Armenian contender. This preference made perfect sense stylistically. Gaethje's striking-focused approach would let Pimblett display his own stand-up skills, while Tsarukyan's suffocating grappling presented a much tougher puzzle. The UFC's hesitation to insert Tsarukyan into this fight was widely believed to stem from concerns about protecting their investment in Pimblett. The company had obviously been developing the Liverpool fighter for a potential super fight with Ilia Topuria, a bout that would create massive pay-per-view numbers in Europe and worldwide. Having Tsarukyan derail those plans with dominant wrestling would represent a major setback to the promotional story the UFC had been carefully building. Theoretical matchups between these three revealed why the UFC might prefer certain combinations. A Tsarukyan-Gaethje fight would heavily favor the Armenian, with his wrestling expected to neutralize Gaethje's striking and grind out a decision. A Tsarukyan-Pimblett matchup would be even more one-sided, with Tsarukyan projected to control the ground while Pimblett's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu got overwhelmed by superior wrestling positioning. The Gaethje-Pimblett contest, while competitive, offered the most unpredictable outcome and the best chance for an exciting war. Other replacement possibilities floated through MMA media. Some suggested Max Holloway, the legendary featherweight turned lightweight, who'd previously knocked out Gaethje spectacularly at UFC 300. Others mentioned Charles Oliveira, the former lightweight champion who remained one of the sport's most dangerous submission artists. A potential Pimblett-Chandler rematch was discussed too, since Chandler had already lost to Pimblett once and might accept a quick turnaround opportunity for revenge. The fight world's response to Gaethje's denial was skeptical at best. Many pointed out the photos seemed to show something more significant than a simple ingrown hair, with the red, swollen appearance being more consistent with bacterial infection than the minor irritation typically seen with Indian facial hair. The fact that Gaethje responded to the theories so quickly suggested the rumors had gained enough momentum to demand attention, which some read as proof the concerns were valid. The established pattern of fighter denials followed by eventual confessions created doubt that straightforward explanations couldn't easily remove. Athletes had consistently shown willingness to compete through injuries, illnesses, and conditions that would stop competitors in other sports, making their public health statements inherently questionable for those familiar with the toughness culture pervading the industry. The UFC's communication approach in these situations usually involved minimal public acknowledgement until circumstances forced action. Dana White's team preferred controlling narratives rather than responding to theories, meaning any official statement about potential fight changes would likely only come if changes became absolutely required. This strategy, while understandable business-wise, left fans and media filling information gaps with increasingly complex theories. The gap between the UFC's public silence and social media explosion created a weird atmosphere where official channels gave no direction while unofficial sources debated every pixel of the controversial photos. Fight fans found themselves torn between wanting their anticipated main event to happen as planned and recognizing the patterns that historically came before last-minute changes. the situation's effects reached far beyond one fight card, raising fundamental questions about fighter health honesty, promotional matchmaking priorities, and the lightweight division's future direction. Whether Gaethje's denial proved correct or the situation developed into a last-minute replacement scenario, the discussion sparked by this incident would have permanent consequences for how the sport handles similar circumstances moving forward. The lightweight division stood at a critical moment that would shape competitive mixed martial arts for years ahead. Champion Ilia Topuria's absence, for personal reasons, had already created uncertainty about when a real title defense might happen. Creating an interim championship was the UFC's way of maintaining divisional momentum, while their champion stayed inactive. The challenger selection for that interim belt had already caused controversy, before the staph infection theories added another layer of madness. Tsarukyan embodied everything hardcore MMA fans respected: technical excellence, constant growth, aggressive fighting style, and willingness to face anyone, anytime. His December 2023 knockout of Beneil Dariush in just 64 seconds at UFC Austin showed devastating power alongside his wrestling dominance. His November 2025 submission of Dan Hooker proved his grappling kept evolving, adding arm triangle chokes to an already complete submission system. The tension between Tsarukyan's technical brilliance and the UFC's apparent preference for more marketable fights crystallized a tension that had long bubbled beneath professional MMA's surface. The promotion operated as business first, sporting organization second, meaning fighter merit was just one consideration among many when determining title opportunity recipients. Pimblett's huge following, especially in the United Kingdom, made him an attractive promotional tool, regardless of whether he'd technically earned his title shot through cage performance. Gaethje's career path added another element to this analysis. At 37, the highlight operated in his fighting career's twilight. His style, absorbing major damage while delivering devastating offense, had built up considerable wear on his body and brain through years of professional competition. The Fiziev victory showed Gaethje could still compete at the top level, but questions about how many more wars his body could handle remained open and troubling. The tale of the tape for this potential fight revealed important style considerations. Gaethje stood 5'11" with 70-inch reach, while Pimblett measured 5'11" with slightly longer, 73-inch reach advantage. Gaethje's significant strike output of roughly 6 P9 per minute with 58 to 60% accuracy beat Pimblett's 5.119 per minute. But Gaethje's striking defense of about 51% was worse than typically considered elite level. His takedown defense registered around 70%, and he could potentially keep the fight standing where his power advantage would be most apparent. The style keys for each fighter were clearly outlined. For Gaethje, victory required attacking Pimblett's legs early to reduce mobility, forcing close exchanges where his power would overwhelm, and stopping takedown attempts while countering with uppercuts and knees. His legendary leg kicks had destroyed multiple elite opponents throughout his career, and using that same strategy against Pimblett represented his clearest victory path. For Pimblett, success meant using his reach and volume to outwork the older fighter, mixing takedowns to force energy expenditure, and capitalizing on scrambles for back control or submissions as the fight moved into championship rounds. His youth, cardio, and grappling threats could become deciding factors if the fight reached rounds 4 and 5, where Gaethje's accumulated damage and age might show as slower reflexes and reduced output. The wider lightweight division implications remained huge regardless of whether this specific fight happened as planned. The winner would position themselves for a unification bout with Topuria later in 2026, assuming the champion returned from personal absence within reasonable time frame. Tsarukyan, whether entering UFC 34 as replacement or continuing to wait, would eventually get his title opportunity. The question was simply timing. The UFC's Paramount Plus debut marked a turning point for the promotion's business approach, moving from traditional pay-per-view towards subscription streaming for certain major events. UFC 34's success would influence how the promotion handled similar cards going forward, making main event stability critically important from both sporting and commercial angles. As Fight Week approached, the MMA world stayed focused on Gaethje's neck, analyzing every subsequent training post and public appearance for signs the situation might be more serious than the fighter admitted. Whether the healing ingrown hair explanation satisfied skeptics or additional evidence emerged supporting the staph infection theory, one reality stayed unchanged. The lightweight division sat ready for potential chaos, with Arman Tsarukyan standing prepared to capitalize should opportunity arise. The collision course between Gaethje and Pimblett, or potentially Tsarukyan and Pimblett, promised violence, drama, and crowning of an interim lightweight champion who would carry the division forward while its undisputed champion remained absent. Whether infection, ingrown hair, or something else entirely determined the final matchup, one certainty remained. The lightweight division would deliver moments justifying its reputation as mixed martial arts' most competitive weight class. The financial impact of any main event change would ripple through the entire promotional system. Paramount Plus had invested heavily in acquiring UFC content, and the debut major event on their platform represented a crucial test of whether combat sports could drive subscription growth in the increasingly competitive streaming environment. A weekend main event, whether through fighter withdrawal or compromised performance due to hidden illness, could undermine the entire strategic reasoning behind the broadcasting partnership. The broader questions this situation raised touched systematic issues within combat sports, extending far beyond any individual fight. Fighter health transparency remained an unsolved challenge, with competitors facing strong incentives to hide injuries and illnesses that might cost opportunities they'd spent months training to secure. The Athletic Commission system provided theoretical oversight, but often proved incapable of detecting issues fighters were determined to conceal. The legacy implications for whichever fighter emerged victorious would echo through lightweight division history. An interim championship, while technically secondary to the undisputed title, carried significant prestige and positioned its holder as the division's de facto face during champion inactivity periods. Gaethje had previously held interim gold, defeating Tony Ferguson in one of UFC history's most violent championship fights. Pimblett sought to add championship credentials to a career that, while successful, hadn't yet reached the sport's pinnacle. For Tsarukyan, any path into the UFC 34 octagon, whether through Gaethje withdrawal or other circumstances, represented vindication for a fighter systematically bypassed, despite doing everything asked inside the cage. His patience and professionalism facing promotional decisions that seemed to prioritize entertainment over merit had earned respect among hardcore fans and fellow fighters alike. The lightweight division had never been more unpredictable, and the chaos surrounding UFC 34 perfectly captured why this weight class continued fascinating combat sports fans globally. What started as sharp-eyed observers examining screenshots from a YouTube training video escalated into comprehensive examination of fighter health transparency, promotional matchmaking philosophy, and the delicate nature of building major events around athletes who pushed their bodies to absolute limits. Justin Gaethje maintains his neck shows nothing beyond a healing ingrown hair, dismissing theories with characteristic aggression and calling out amateur investigators who turned a brisket-eating moment into disease evidence. Benoit Saint-Denis' shadow looms over these denials, a fighter who followed the identical playbook of dismissal before eventually admitting staff had indeed compromised his performance when it counted most. The MMA community has been fooled before, and their skepticism reflects hard-earned lessons rather than groundless paranoia. Arman Tsarukyan remains the unspoken factor in every discussion of this fight. The number one ranked contender, passed over for marketability reasons, stands ready to capitalize on any opening. His training camp maintained championship intensity, precisely because circumstances in this sport change with brutal unpredictability. Whether he enters UFC 34 as last-minute replacement or continues his frustrating wait for what everyone acknowledges he deserves, Tsarukyan represents the meritocratic ideal that promotional realities often sacrifice for entertainment value. The UFC's Paramount Plus debut hangs in the balance, a multi-million-dollar broadcasting experiment depending on delivering the spectacle subscribers expect. Paddy Pimblett needs a dance partner who will stand and trade, feeding the narrative of rising star conquering established veteran. Gaethje provides that matchup perfectly. Tsarukyan does not. He provides a wrestling clinic that ends promotional dreams. As January 24th approaches, every training post from Gaethje's camp will be analyzed with forensic intensity. Every photograph will be zoomed, enhanced, and debated across social platforms, hungry for any sign the main event might shift. The lightweight division remains mixed martial arts' most unpredictable weight class, and this situation perfectly exemplifies why that reputation persists. Whether Gaethje's neck heals without incident, or Tsarukyan receives the call he's been waiting for, one truth remains absolute. Someone is getting crowned interim lightweight champion at T-Mobile Arena, And the violence required to claim that belt will be spectacular regardless of who stands across from Paddy Pimblett. The only question left is who survives fight week healthy enough to compete, and in this sport, that question never gets answered until the cage door closes.